Production funding for Another View comes from the Hampton Citizens Unity Commission, using the time, talents, and skills of a broad base of citizen volunteers to help break down racial and cultural barriers, working to achieve the City of Hampton's community plan for a healthy, diverse community. And from the African American Programming Advisory Group, community visionaries assisting WHRO to engage, enlighten, educate, and entertain all communities in Hampton Roads. And now, Another View.
Hi, everybody. I'm Barbara Hamley, and welcome to Another View. Here comes the bride. What emotions and thoughts does that song evoke when you hear it? Fond memories of a wonderful day? Or some shame because you were a bridezilla? Every little girl has her wedding fantasy, and our guests are here to share the secrets that are to ensure that your wedding day is as wonderful as you ever dreamed it would be. Please welcome Mia Byrd, Special Events Coordinator for the Chrysler Museum and my wedding planner; Keith Cephus, Wedding Photographer Extraordinaire; Isha Foss, who creates magical weddings; and Mia Warburton, a designer and expert on wedding attire. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Another View.
Hello.
Thanks for joining us. Okay, in full disclosure to the audience and to you all, this week was my 10th-month anniversary. I'm still a newlywed. And so, Mia, I'm gonna start with you. Was I a bridezilla or not?
No, not at all. Actually, you were overly relaxed. Yeah, it actually kind of made me nervous because I would ask you, oh, well, what do you want to do? Do you know what colors you want? Oh, no, it's fine. You go ahead and pick that color. She didn't know what cake she wanted, so she said, no, you pick the color. So it's fine. I don't want any green. No green at all. And that was
pretty much my only rule. But do you find, Aisha, that you either get people who are very, very specific, or do they just kind of let you work your magic? How should one interact with a wedding planner?
Well, I think it helps everyone if you have some ideas of things that are important to you that you'd like to incorporate into the wedding. And with the internet, brides come in with lots of inspiration photos. And of course, we don't try to replicate anybody else's design, but we use that as a springboard to create something, especially for our brides.
Now, is there something that's hot or new? I'm talking to the planners right now, and I'll get to the rest of you in a minute. But is there something that's hot or new this year that everyone is doing?
Well, I find that the lounges are still very big in terms of creating another space within your wedding so that you can have that kind of club or after party feel for those who might want to just relax around the dance floor, that kind of thing. You're seeing still the candy buffets, candy stations we'll call it, and still the cupcakes, but I have a feeling that trend is on its way out.
Oh, okay, okay. And what about location, Mia? I know that that's one big thing that you do working for the Chrysler. You bring in people who want to have their weddings there, but what's the best way to find a good location?
Well, it depends on whether you like the indoors or the outdoors. A lot of people, like Botanical Garden, for example, they really love being outside. Something at the Chrysler Museum that we now offer, I guess, is we have 2 gardens on the outsides on either side of the museum, so people can get married in the museum, but they also have an alternate rain plan. So whether you want to do an indoor-outdoor wedding, your guest number is a big factor, especially in this area, because there aren't a lot of specialty areas like the museum or Botanical Garden that can accommodate large reception sizes. Usually you'll end up at a hotel banquet room if you want to do a large hotel, which is still beautiful, and it just depends on kind of the colors and decor you're going for.
So decor is a big thing. Now, we all know that the economy is kind of crazy right now. So are people doing some things to cut back or to do things a little differently? For example, I got married in the morning because I found, as I was looking for locations and so forth, that the prices were a little bit cheaper. Are they doing things of that nature, Aisha?
I would say so. I've found that the weddings I've already had this year have been 50 people, 50 to 75.
So keeping the guest list down.
Right. So while the national trend for wedding budgets has gone down by only about $1,000, you see the guest count coming way down, which allows you to really treat those 50 guests really well and make it something really special.
What's the average price for a wedding these days?
$26,000.
That's the average.
Yes.
That's the average.
And so, and that means there's a whole lot less than that, but then These pictures that brides bring in, those are usually from weddings that are $100,000 and $200,000.
Gotcha.
So there's the disconnect.
Gotcha.
That's where we come in.
Maya, let's talk about the all-important dress.
Absolutely.
Now, I know that there are some people who, as I got older, my dress got shorter. So, I wound up in a shorter dress and not a gown. But what's the trend this year? What are people doing?
Well, I think the beautiful thing about wedding dresses today is that the sky is the limit, really, and there's not a whole lot of rules in terms of what a woman should wear or feel like she has to wear, which makes it really fun for us. So, you know, I try to represent a lot of different styles, lengths, silhouettes, price points, so that we have something for every woman. I would say, you know, 2 pieces of advice if you're getting ready to go buy your wedding gown is, A, keep an open mind. A lot of women come in again with pictures for inspiration. This is what they think that they want, and then soon they find out the dress that they thought was going to be their dream gown doesn't really look good on them at all.
Right.
So we're kind of backtracking and starting from square one. And then secondly, stay true to yourself. It's really fun and exciting to involve all of your friends and family in the purchasing process, but everybody has an opinion, and sometimes their opinion is more about what they like and not so much about what looks good on the bride and what she wants.
How do you handle that? Because I personally experienced that.
Yeah, I think a lot of women have probably gone through that. I listen to everybody's opinion, as do all of my consultants. We want everyone who's part of the shopping experience to feel like they have a voice, but ultimately we'll go back to the people that are offering commentary and say, you know, but she loves this gown, so it's about her again.
So
and then we'll go back to the bride and say, how do you feel? Why do you love this one so much? Because sometimes maybe she's not explaining it to her friends and family why she wants this gown so much, and that it makes her feel like one of a
How
kind.
soon should you order your gown?
Okay, we recommend at least 8 months prior to the wedding. So now in some
I broke all the rules, didn't
yeah.
I?
Now, it's not realistic in some cases, especially if you're trying to plan a wedding in 6 months. My store, you can buy off the rack. We have over 400 dresses in stock, so that is an option. With most designers, you can also rush a gown if we need to. But ideally, if you're planning 10 to 16 months out, even longer, we want that peace of mind that there's plenty of time for delivery. We were talking about the economy a minute ago, and you know, a lot of our designers use manufacturers overseas. Well, factories are closing overseas. So right now, I'm experiencing delays in almost all of my orders. So, you know, we encourage people to purchase early, not to just close a sale, but really to give you that peace of mind that we have time to get your merchandise in and to alter it before the wedding. So.
And Keith, I have not forgotten about you, but before we get to pictures, the other part of this that we need to take a look at is the catering portion of it, how you prepare for your reception. And Lisa Godley caught up with one of our favorite caterers. Her name is Deidre Blount, owner of Now You're Cooking, to give us some advice on planning your reception.
Deidre Blount is truly an expert when it comes to food preparation and catering, and she's going to tell us a little bit about what we can do if we have a little bit of money to spend putting that wedding together, or a lot of money to spend. And Deidre, what are we going to start with today? Appetizers?
Yes, we'll start with appetizers. A lot of times when guests are looking to plan their event, they think, well, we'll go with appetizers or heavy hors d'oeuvres for the reception. But a lot of times from a catering aspect, it costs more money because it's more pieces. You can decide to do a full course meal and then offer platters such as fruit. And then you can do some chicken skewers or some cherry tomatoes with mozzarella. It just depends. You might want to look more into buffets if you're on a budget, but if you have the money to spend, then the seated plated dinner could be more effective. It's going to be more costly because you have to have one server per every 20 guests. So, and then if you have a bar, that's going to run your cost up as well. So a lot of times I suggest buffet, but then also to make it look nicer, then you add a couple of action stations, like a pasta station where you may have a chef that's there cooking at the station while people are going through.
Everyone wants a nice setting when it comes to your rehearsal dinner or your wedding, but I know that plates or china can run up the cost. Yes?
Yes, very much so.
Okay, alrighty. What have we here?
Well, this is our budget form of our table setting. And what we decided to do with this is just use some disposable items. and try to display them as nicely as possible with the bright colored napkins and the darker one inside. And then even the tablecloth is an iridescent, but it's also disposable as well. One of the newest trends is to go with something whimsical. Choose a theme. Say it could be something that the bride and groom are into, and then use those things to help with their settings, where their favors are popcorn boxes, and they use as their favor a ticket that has, now showing here Mr. and Mrs. Blunt at this event.
Tell me a little bit about this table setting here.
Well, this table setting is going to be quite a bit more costly. Black and white is a very big theme with small accent colors, but also monochromatic is the big theme. So a lot of times they will have, if blue is the color, then the tablecloth is blue, the chargers are blue, the little acrylic diamonds are blue, the flower arrangements are blue, the glasses are blue, everything across the board. So that's the big trend for 2009 and 2010.
Dedra, what about centerpieces?
A lot of times people will spend exorbitant amounts of money with these centerpieces in the church, and the wedding lasts 45 minutes and the reception lasts 3 hours. So the best thing to do is to use the flowers that you have at the church and have them brought over to the reception ahead of time so they can be used for the rest of the evening. Or you could go and decide that your centerpieces don't have to be flowers at all. It could be something edible. It could be an arrangement of pictures or frames and things like that. A lot of times now they're doing chandeliers in the middle of the tables. So there are things that you could do other than flowers.
This table smells absolutely fabulous and looks fabulous because it's the wedding cake table, one of my favorites. What do we have here, Dedra?
This is one of the examples that could either be a groom's cake or it could be the wedding cake, depending on how wild the crowd is. And you always want wedding cake to be good cake because it's the last thing that people are going to taste before they leave your reception. So you want to make sure that you always go and do a cake tasting and taste something that is very appetizing to you. One of the best cost-effective ways to do your wedding cake is to have a very small cake for pictures and all those types of things, and then in the back have sheet cake.
So if you're planning your wedding, these are some really good tips that you should use to make your wedding day a very special one.
And the reception is all about the party, isn't it, Aisha?
Absolutely.
So tell me, what are some of the things, pieces of advice you would give someone as they're thinking about their reception? Let's say we're doing a wedding for 50 people.
Okay.
What are some of the things they should be thinking about?
When people leave a reception, they never say, "Ooh, those linens were the most beautiful I've ever seen." They say that was some good food and the music was good. So you want to get the best food that you can afford and some great music, whether that be a DJ, a band, or an iPod even. And you want to do the most that you can comfortably afford. I think that it's wonderful to offer a specialty drink or maybe just a toast as opposed to having your guests pay for a bar.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I was going to ask, do a lot of people still do open bar?
A lot of people do it, but on a modified basis. They may just offer beer and wine, or they may offer a cocktail in their color, So it doesn't have to be every kind of liquor because people are really there to celebrate with you. It's okay for them to pass up on alcohol for about 3 hours.
Exactly.
They can do it.
They will be okay.
They'll be all right.
And Keith, we are not going to leave you out of this conversation because we have to have the all-important wedding picture.
Yes.
Now, I want to ask you from the start, what is it that you would encourage every bride to think about or to do in terms of picking the photographer that they're going to use?
Well, first of all, don't skim, because by the end of the day, the only thing you have left are these photos. 10, 20, 30 years from now, you want to be able to look back and to say, wow, my wedding was spectacular. So the advice I give the brides is don't skim. And do your research. Everyone has a website. Go out there, Google Virginia top wedding photographers and see who's out there and try to find a photographer who fits your style.
How do you work best with the bride and the groom? What do you want them to do? Tell me, give us a feel of what you go through on the day, let's say the wedding day,
Right.
that morning as you're getting, some of those shots, or are you doing stuff ahead of time?
Well, first of all, I need to trust you. You have to trust me, because I'm the type of photographer that I'm going to take you to a place where you've never been. So once we've established a trust, then we can proceed and to really create some really beautiful photos. And basically, just let's have fun. I think outside the box. I'm really creative, and by the end of the day, I want to give you something that you'd be able to treasure for the rest of your life.
And what do you want, for example, I know that some people would like to have pictures taken as they go through the process of getting dressed, and then they go through the process of going to the church and so forth and so on. I mean, are you that type of photographer, or would you rather do something more creative? Like, I've seen some of your pieces where you had people out on the beach and you've had them, you know, laying side by side. I mean, just doing some really cool things.
Well, you know, my style is very methodical. You know, an hour and a half I try to show up. I get all the detail shots, the dress on the hanger, the shoes, dad seeing his daughter for the first time. So, you know, I try to keep within tradition. And when time allows, that's when I get edgy and I get creative.
Now, all of you all are African American, but you don't just do African American weddings. And I know that you're in Vow magazine, which is a big wedding magazine in the area. You can find out more information about your individual companies. But for African American weddings, are people still doing things such as jumping the broom, for example? Are they requesting that type of ceremony?
Not so much at the museum. I haven't seen that a lot. They're very traditional when it comes to the museum, because I think when they get inside of the museum, it's a traditional space. They kind of feel like they're in the Renaissance era. So I haven't seen that a lot, anything traditional. There was one wedding where the family did wear, I guess, the kente cloth, and they had some of the flowers, had some of the different colors that were in the kente cloth from the family, but there wasn't anything traditional really at the museum. No.
What about you, Aisha?
I absolutely see it, and there's even more of a return to it now, I would say. So lots of jumping the broom, and also other things like the 4 elements. We've done a couple weddings where, you know, you partake of the cayenne pepper, and that's the last time you're going to feed each other, you know, something that's going to harm them or make them uncomfortable, and then you feed them honey so they taste together the sweetness of marriage and things like that. So lots of traditional elements, because they can be just as formal and beautiful as any other tradition.
And what about attire for a typical African type wedding, or do you see that often too?
I don't
or do people
see that so often. I think you know, when they're shopping in my store, they're looking for what is, you know, generally hot for today's weddings. What I do see though is they will have larger bridal parties, in the sense they'll be the bridesmaids and the groomsmen, but then they also have ushers and hostesses, and so they try to involve as much of their family and friends as they possibly can in some aspect of the wedding day, where I don't necessarily see that, you know, in other weddings. So
I have to tell you one quick question I have for you. What I noticed when I was looking for a wedding dress was that there were a lot of mother of the bride dresses, but they weren't necessarily wedding dresses. Right. You know, is there a trend towards, because there are a lot of older brides now, to get in clothing?
Sure. I think, you know, you have to do a little bit of research, and not every designer is going to design for, you know, the older, more sophisticated bride. We try to represent designers that will do dresses in color, in a silver, a pewter, gold, champagne, something not white or ivory, that would be offered with either a shawl or a jacket or long sleeves. It's hard to find designers out there, so again, if you are that bride, it is about doing some research. I'm happy to say we can represent that bride. So, and if you have designers that don't do that, ask about your alteration staff. My seamstress can create anything that's
and
so she'll do that for our bride.
Now, we've been talking about the bride all along. However, there is another party involved. They say that this day is all about the bride, but what about the groom? What role does he play? Lisa talked with some grooms who have very wise perceptions.
For the most part, the role of the groom really hasn't changed that much since the last generation. The groom's list back then had 3 things: buy the ring, rent the tux, and get to the church on time. However, with so much going into the weddings of today, many grooms have decided to step up their responsibilities a bit. Deontay Hundley helped his fiancée Tamara Giles stuff over 300 wedding invitations.
It's a lot more planning than I ever thought. You know, like the guy, mostly his role is just to, like you say, sit back, show up, this and that, but it's a lot that really goes into the wedding, and I think if you help your fiancé out here and there, you know, they're appreciated in the end.
Deontay and Tamara will tie the knot next month. And like most grooms-to-be, Deontay sits in but doesn't say much as they go over details with a representative from the Founders Inn.
Musicians will be here. We have a sound system coming.
Okay.
They're bringing keyboards, speakers, and the like. So.
Deontay says he learned his role early on.
The first thing even the pastor told me, this is the females' day. You know, it's supposed to be a big day for the guy too, but it's all about the females.
I learned 2 words. Yeah. Yes, dear. Yes. 2 words.
Deontay is one of 3 grooms-to-be we gathered for our rap session. Maxie Lee was the only married man, a newlywed, hitched just 10 months ago. He describes his role this way.
I was just a willing participant in Barbara Ham's wedding.
While many grooms see themselves as willing participants in the big day, some choose to take on more than others. Francis Scott is one of them.
I've been involved in everything.
Okay, what have you done?
Everything from the flowering process, the limousines, naturally the rings, the cake. I've been involved in it all.
The grooms all felt it was part of their job to keep their eyes on the budget because, as one of the guys told me, there is life after the wedding. But all of our grooms thought it was a bit over the top when I read them an excerpt from an article on a husband-to-be in Texas.
He spent 4 hours sewing beads on his bride's wedding gown before they said, I do, in December.
He's special.
He's very special.
And while they may not be interested in sewing beads on wedding gowns, all are determined to see their marriages work. To better ensure that, they either took or are taking premarital counseling and workshops, giving them a better grasp on their roles as husbands.
I think it's kind of exciting, though, looking forward to what the marriage is going to bring out as far as the family and all of that, so I'm looking forward to it.
I learned that you can't change a person. Don't expect her to be something else that you want her to be or try to change her into something else because it's not going to happen.
If you don't, just like he said, if you don't like something, say it right away. You don't like it. Don't pretend that you like it and then later on you're like, you know what, I ain't never like that. You know, a lot of times I think as men we get caught up on the wife submitting. But I think it's a two-way thing. You know, it's 2 people having to submit. I also have a duty to be submissive to my wife if I want her to be submissive to me.
So when you are uniting 2 people, you need to start looking for a commitment because you're going to have problems in life. And when you're bringing 2 people together, everybody, I don't agree with everything Barbara agrees with. She doesn't agree with everything I agree with, but we're able to communicate and work things out, you know, like you guys have said, and that's what it takes.
For Another View, I'm Lisa Godley.
Boy, see, Lisa just put me out there. But Keith, let's ask you, is it all about the woman?
Absolutely. I mean, if you want your marriage to last, yes, dear, no, dear. It's about the woman. But more importantly, it's about compromising, you know, and that's what it's all about.
Now, when you're taking pictures, though, and so forth, you do get the grooms involved, and you do have fun with them. So talk to me a little bit about how you talk with them and what their concerns are.
Well, basically, they're really, really nervous. So I try to create a nice, you know, comfortable atmosphere. You know, maybe just get a shot, line up all the guys, and just kind of get them running at me, just to really show some emotion and just have some fun, because they're pretty wound up, pretty tight, to say the least.
Well, we only have a couple minutes left, so I want to ask each of you if you have one piece of advice that you would give to a couple thinking about getting married. Now, what would that be? And I'm going to start with you, Maya.
I would say my piece of advice is understand that planning is a process. There will be hiccups along the way, whether you're planning for 2 months or you're planning for 2 years, and that, you know, like Keith said, you have to find compromise. You have to understand that it's one day in this large scope of life that you're going to have together, and have patience with everybody who's helping you in the process, whether it's the store you bought the dress from or your wedding planner or the venue. We're all here to help you make it beautiful.
Okay. We only got real quick. Go ahead.
Enjoy the day, or else it's not worth all the effort.
Keith?
There is life after the marriage. Stay within your budget.
And Mia.
Off of that, stay within your budget, but you can have everything you want in your budget.
Thank you all so much for joining us. You guys were great today. I really appreciate it. And that's Ms. Mia Byrd, who's the events coordinator at the Chrysler Museum, Keith Cephus, who's a wonderful photographer, Isha Foss, who makes magical weddings, and Maya Warburton, designer of beautiful wedding gowns. Thank you once again for joining us. And we hope you've enjoyed this edition of Another View. Please be sure to check out our website, www.anotherview.tv, and send us a note with your comments. Or you can write us at 5200 Hampton Boulevard, Norfolk. Next week, we'll meet some very courageous women who appreciate life every day. They are breast cancer survivors, and they have a critical message for women and men about this disease. We'll see you next week for Another View.
Production funding for Another View comes from Hampton's 400th Anniversary Committee and the Hampton Neighborhood Commission, partnering with neighborhoods throughout the city, working hand in hand to create vibrant places we are proud to call home and celebrate. And from the African American Programming Advisory Group, community visionaries assisting WHRO to engage, enlighten, educate, and entertain all communities in Hampton Roads.